This week at the Multiverse, Jace learns that Island is not always the most powerful card in Magic.
Also today on the Multiverse, Whatley discovers that she has to work twice as hard for a position she's already overqualified for.
And Vraska and Jace take the term of character shipping a little too literally. All that and more as we discuss Magic the Gathering lore at the Multiverse. Welcome to At the Multiverse. I'm the Professor, and with me as always is my co-host, Michelle, the Librarian of the Loregoyfs.
Hello, nice to see you.
Michelle, what are we going to be doing on this show?
So basically what we're going to be doing every time we talk to each other like this is discuss Magic story from the perspective of basically a critic. We're going to be applying our knowledge of literature and film and basic just love of Vorthos to these stories.
Or possible hate of some of these stories.
Or possible hate.
Yes, that may be coming more from one of the two hosts than the other. I will not spoil which one is more likely to have some anger issues towards the story. We'll be covering all of Ixalan, starting today with Jace alone.
He's alone.
He is alone.
He's so alone.
And he's on an island. And that pretty much is the story. And yet there's actually a lot to talk about here, despite the fact that if you were to summarize this, that's all there is to say. Jace is alone on an island, and he has lost his memory. Again.
Yeah, again. Yeah, no, if we made this into a film, it probably would be about 2.5 hours long.
They did make it into a film. It starred Tom Hanks.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They did. And it's just as riveting, I think, in this slightly condensed, Jace-focused medium.
No, I disagree. I think it was actually pretty good. So, what we're seeing on Jace alone is the rebooting of Jace the character. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think that's absolutely fair to say. It's a wonderful take on blue. For a long time now, we've had basically Jace embody the color blue in the Gatewatch, as well as, basically being the figurehead for Magic the Gathering, and he's always been presented as a sort of broody, somewhat angsty, inquisitive, but like
emo.
Very much, yeah, definitely shades of Hot Topic there, I would think, given his, predilection for Lily and whatnot. But in this, we're given a very new, fresh take on the color blue. We're really diving into sort of the inquisitiveness, the inventiveness, the search for knowledge that is a very joyful side of blue.
I think also what we see here is not just the search for knowledge, but the search for self, because since Jace has amnesia, he's thinking a lot about who am I, but not in the kind of amnesiac, who am I sort of way, but he's asking, if I was someone before, am I that someone now? And he kind of comes to the conclusion, and this was what sealed it for me, was where he said, essentially, to heck with who I was before, I can invent my own. I invent my own tomorrow. But that is actually what he discovers. And I think that for many of us who, especially when we come into the world out of the teenage years and we're off on our own, we discover that we are in charge of our own destiny. We can shape ourselves as we would a piece of clay, how we wish to dress, how we wish to interact with the world, and Jace is reaching those conclusions as well. If the old Jace was this angsty teenager, this is Jace in his mid-20s forward actually coming into his own, and I really like this take on the character. I've never liked Jace. I actually, it was not just that he was overused as the figurehead of Magic, but he was a very hard to relate to character. He was very snotty and self-absorbed, and he treated everything as this groaning inconvenience. He never had any joy. He was just like, oh, I'm in charge of Ravnica. Sucks. Oh, here comes the Boros. Sucks. Oh, Liliana, she's such a problem. Sucks. Gideon, sucks. Ugin said, don't do that. What does he know? Millennia-old elder dragon of such infinite knowledge she transcends color and stupid. I know more than him. I'm Jace. I know everything. oh crap, it all blew up in my face again. I'm worthless and I can't even barely control anything with my mind, apparently. I mean, I really disliked the character, is what I'm trying to say.
You know, yeah, no, I really appreciate the sort of your subtle choice of words in expressing
subtle.
yourself. I really appreciate that.
That's me, I'm subtle.
Oh, totally. You don't believe this guy.
Right.
What's interesting about you saying that he reminds you a lot of those turbulent adolescent years is that I know that in times previous, you've actually mentioned how Jace is more of like a resigned adult, especially when you were doing the Urza versus Jace kind of comparison in one of your previous videos. And in many ways, you know, I think that angstiness isn't just for teens. It could also be for middle-aged folks who are like, you know, he's like, oh, I've got a guild pact thing and I've got to worry about the gruel eating people again and coffee, give me coffee. And in a sense, it's almost as if he's kind of gone to like a forced, very California-esque beach retreat.
Yes.
You know, like one of those things
Relax,
where it's like,
Jace, relax.
Relax, Jace. Like just like calm your inner mind and rediscover the joy.
Is this the first time we've seen Jace happy? Like he gets giddy at points. He giggles and laughs and amuses himself in a very pure way too, because there is something with his amnesia, and it's that weird sort of, we've seen this version of memory loss portrayed in various mediums where he both knows and doesn't know. So he knows what he knows what an illusion is when he finds he can create them, but he didn't know that he could create them. But he isn't just ignorant of all things. He simply lacks a lot of the specifics about himself, about his past, about the world around him, and yet the library of knowledge is still mostly in there.
Yeah, no, it's still mostly in there, but it comes down to, like we said before, it's the examination of the self, given the knowledge that you have, given the amount of control that you can exert, which is in this case very blue through knowledge. So the fact that he only has this to work with, you piece it together and it's sort of like, well, I don't have anything else, so I might as well just wing it and see what happens. And again, that kind of plays into Blue's sort of very experimental sort of tinkering inventiveness. And then we see that kind of being expressed through his love of creating new things on this island. He figures out how to make a spoon. And he's just so excited by that. It's adorable. He's like, I'm going to use this shell as a makeshift knife. I'm going to lay traps down. It's going to be super great. Like,
is this a shift? Because Jace was always, even though we've never seen him as a card this way, he was pretty friendly with the Azurius. He was very blue-white, especially as a guild pack. He was, no, that's the rules. Those are the law, and that's not blue, that's white. And when you say creating, I think red. When you say experimenting, I think red. Red is the madcap experiment, after all. Is it possible that Jace is going to start connecting more with a blue-red sort of philosophy? Or is it just that he had such an enormous stick up his butt that seeing that removed by Nicol Bolas with his memory wipe simply makes us feel like he's much redder than he really is, and this is just finally a true mono blue without that white blind obedience to the law that was always such a big part of him in many ways, unless of course he disagreed with the law and then, no, I'm not going to do it. No. Oh. And can I just say, please, can we not have his memories come back? I know people have, we're going to talk about this from the perspective of just having read this story. We will catch up with, there's several stories ahead, and we are into them, but we're going to try and block them out. And at this point, as I'm reading Jace alone, I'm thinking, good, you rebooted the character. I say it's a successful reboot. Tell me what you think in a second. But I think it's a highly successful reboot. You get to keep the poster boy. You get to keep his image. But for anyone that reads the lore, I think this was very successful. I saw a lot of positive reaction in the community. So for the love of everything, do not pull a Star Trek Voyager on us and just hit the reset button when you do something interesting with the character and then set us back to square one, because the old version was insufferable.
Oh God, yeah. No, it's interesting that you are making the sort of blue-white, blue-red, I guess, points, because I guess for me, every color has a spectrum. And so with blue, like the worst that blue can do is basically what you saw with old Jace, right?
Right.
Jace had an enormous stick up his butt. Apparently, come to Ixalan helps you remove sticks up your butt. So, come to Ixalan.
Yes, we'll talk about then Vraska's vacation in just a bit. But
I really did enjoy the story. I enjoyed the ways that the illusions interacted with him. It really revealed a lot of how Jace sees himself in relation to other people. Like Lily showed up twice, for example.
Right.
And that was very interesting because every time she showed up, it was always to basically just kind of look down on him and tell him, like...
I thought it was interesting her saying I was the best thing that ever happened to you. I mean, because that's him. That's not her.
Yeah, that's him.
It's his impression of her, perhaps, but it's also a way that he's talking to himself. And he's saying at the end of the day, she was actually I liked having her in my life, and I screwed that up because he was too, I mean, my God, when they went on their date and he's going to play games with like, well, you didn't actually ask me, Lily, so I'm not going to help you. And yet he knows she needed help, and that's why he was so insufferable. I think most people reading that story when then Gideon comes up and date blocks him and jock blocks him, and then he runs off with Gideon to Zendikar. Everyone's like, no, go off with Lily instead, and that he's just going to play some kind of, no pun intended, mind game where it's just, well, no, he asked, you didn't. And so this is, again, him, and through him, the writers, perhaps, saying this character had some problems. Speaking of problems, were there any problems that you found with Jace alone?
Honestly, I really enjoyed the whole story. I thought it was a very interesting character and like a deep dive into Jace, the character. A character that I never even thought I ever wanted a deep dive into in the past. I do think that there were maybe one or two things I would have liked to have seen. Maybe just, I guess, a little bit more third-person perspective. It was a lot of first-person perspective, which is fine. It's gonna really bother me because in the very beginning they say that he takes off his leather breastplate and all this other stuff, but then like when he's portrayed in the Jacek lands, he's got all of his stuff on. Like he's got like kind of like a quarter of his stuff torn off, but he's still got the leather breastplate, and I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know why he wears it to begin with.
It's just made of belts.
Yeah, it's just made of belts.
He really likes belts.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than that, I think it's one of the strongest stories I've ever seen.
Like ever. This one by itself. Okay,
so.
Wow.
I would say
then,
so.
So out of 5 mana symbols, how many colors are you going to give it?
I would probably give it up to a mountain. So.
Well, that's full 5 color. We're still working on the
No. Forest is 5.
Forest is 5. So you're going to give it 4 out of 5.
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. That's actually exactly what I'm going to give it as well. We're in
Nice.
agreement here.
Excellent.
I think that the story was near perfect. I think that as a reboot of the character, this is great. We end on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Vraska has found him. She's about to kill him, and then we see this sudden shift, which is actually indicating very positive things for Vraska's character, that she's not mono-evil, Snidely Whiplash, or as we also might call it, Tezzeret, just a complete one-dimensional cartoonish evil figure. She's suddenly noticing that he's downtrodden, and she is a champion of the oppressed, has a complete change in attitude from being about ready to kill him to what the hell happened to you, and so we'll talk about that in just a second, but I definitely also give this 4 out of 5 mana symbols, as you said, up to red.
We're up
It's a little
to red
hard,
now.
Up to red now.
We're up to red. We just got to give her our Wooburg.
Okay,
Yeah.
Wooburg. Great.
Coming up next, we'll discuss A Question of Confidence, the second story in the Ixalan Magic Story series.
Huatli is a poet, and we all know it because it's right in her card title.
Yes,
So I'm confident she's a poet.
Yeah, well, that's what... And a warrior.
Yes.
And a
but
warrior.
Beyond that, we learn more about her, or do we, in A Question of Confidence?
That is a good question.
So this is our famous Introduction to Planeswalker of the Set story. We get these once per set. There's usually a planeswalker that, despite the ability to travel the infinite cosmos of the multiverse, all of reality stretched out before you. Most of these planeswalkers just chill at their home plane and are wrapped up in petty little politics, old feuds, old desires. They don't really care about the never-ending multiverse. On Ixalan, we have an excuse for this, which is that you can't leave Ixalan if you're a planeswalker. So my first question to you, Michelle, is Huatli a planeswalker when she's never successfully walked to another plane?
She has the potential to planeswalk.
Okay.
And so I guess it comes back to, how are we defining a planeswalker? Is it someone who has actually walked to another plane?
She has her spark ignited.
Her spark has ignited. So if we're going by, like, has her spark ignited, then yes, she is a planeswalker, even if she hasn't actually walked physically to another plane yet. Like, she almost made it to Kaladesh. It was like, and then we're going back.
Right.
So that's pretty much how that happened.
You know what would have been clever is, instead of showing us Kaladesh, which is what we just came from, they showed us, like, some of the artwork, which they have, of like 3 planes from now. And that would have just been really cool. And nothing else on it. Just, that's it. And I know that then that's all anyone's talking about. It could also just be a basic island sort of thing. People would be speculating. You wouldn't know, is this the Viking plane necessarily? Maybe you'd see some snow. People might say that's Dominaria, because they do the artwork very well in advance. I know the artists are working on sets years from now. Mm-hmm. And so instead of looking back, let's look forward. But anyway, they show us a vision of Kaladesh.
So I guess if you don't mind switching topics a little bit, I do have some issues with Huatli in this particular story, just because it's
Me too, but you first.
Sure.
Oh boy, let's start with your issues, because boy, do I got a long list.
Well, first of all, I really related to Huatli in the sense that, wow, I'm really overqualified for this job, and I'm totally like, look at my resume, look at my work for the past 3 to 4 quarters. I clearly have earned this title change. I really need it. And the Emperor's like,
Yeah.
Now you need to go to Araska.
That's so ridiculous too, because
it's so silly, and it's just like, why? There is no good reason why she doesn't have the damn title, because it's like, she's the best order and the best warrior in the freaking empire. Like, who else is it gonna go to?
Right.
Really?
Well, but also that type of a request is ridiculous, because this is the lost city.
Yeah.
No one has been, no one has found it. It's the lost city, and so is that a reasonable task to accomplish? I mean, I'd say if she finds the lost city, she's emperor. Like screw warrior poet. That is you're not just warrior poet then. What about the last warrior poet? What did they have to do? Like, write a poem, and she has to go find the lost city that's never been found and no one has ever returned? That's just called no. Just say no then. Just say no then. Just say no, I can't have it. It's such a ridiculous sort of task, and her response to it, as though it's just, I find it's too much like that old thing where it's the D&D and the wizard in the tavern, and it's just so much of a setup. You can see the hand of the author here.
Not only that, but it just seems really unrealistic in some ways, because it's someone who is supposedly as accomplished and as intelligent and as talented as Huatli. I think that she should be able to stand up for herself a little bit more in this situation and say, you know what? I earned this thing. Yep. I don't need... Did the last warrior poet have to go and find the freaking golden city?
What was it that the last warrior poet did? Can I do that, please?
Did he just write a really good haiku? Because I've got, like, so many sonnets here.
Right.
But it's just like, no, I've got to go find this freaking thing in order to become the next warrior.
And it's also... It's a thing that's being put upon her, as opposed to her. So here, let me offer you a different pitch.
Okay.
Here's my different pitch. Huatli wants to be warrior poet, and she has to work twice as hard, as you say, as everyone else to get this sort of set up. And the Emperor says, let's just say the Emperor says, no, I don't like you. Like, no, you are qualified. I don't know, something about you I don't like, whatever. I'm not going to give it to you. And that this is actually when her spark ignites, and she sees and then she is pulled back, and she actually I believe she hasn't met Minotaur
Yeah.
Planeswalker yet, but let's actually bring in Minotaur Planeswalker. What's his name again?
Ongroth.
Ongroth. So let's actually say that's when Ongroth shows up and is able to then, and she's never seen a Minotaur, and so she just had a vision of another world, and then she's never seen a Minotaur in this being, and instead of this typical, so now he's the mustache twirling villain. Stop with that crap. He comes up and he is able to talk to her a little bit about what that is, because he's stranded, and he believes that that city is how he will get free. And so how about this? Instead of she wants to be the warrior poet, she says nuts to this. Nuts to this system, nuts to the patriarchy, or the paleontarchy, or whatever, the paleontarchy, nuts to the paleontarchy. Screw you, you can take this job and shove it. I am going to go off with this being from another world, and I am going to find the lost city so that I can get the hell out of here. And I don't need to be a warrior poet because I'm going to roam the cosmos because of my own spark. And so instead of this is this thing foisted on her, this is a thing she takes up to be more and to do more, to accomplish more. Mm-hmm. And as it is, I feel so bored with just task given by unreasonable NPC. That's all this is. It's
you were saying that, and the only thing I had in my head was like, "Yes, queen."
Yes, queen. I don't know what that means, but it sounds right. I see people tweet it on Twitter. I don't know what that means.
It's just a reference that people make when they think a woman is being amazing, and I'm just like, if Whatley did that and was like, "Screw the system's bogus. I'm out of here. Bye, boy, bye," and kind of just like heads out. That would be amazing. I would love that, because it makes it about empowering herself.
Right. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. And I like that for that's what we previously said I liked about Jace, is that he's like, screw who I was before. I'm going to be me now. And that, I think, is very favored by an audience, especially of Magic players, is Magic is about self-empowerment. Mm-hmm. You make your deck, you make your plays, you own your mistakes. And so I think that seeing characters who are not, that's why this idea, I don't want to go back to harping on Jace, but that he just hates, his job and he hates his life and stuff is boring. You don't want that. We want, I'm going out upon the unknown. Self-empowerment is something we want to see in all of our characters. And I think that it was a missed opportunity with Whatley here. Our first introduction to her, it's everything she can't do. She can't planeswalk. She can't become Dino Warrior Poet or whatever it is. She can't find the Lost City. She can't anything. And so why am I going to be excited about her and her quest? It's like, yes, you can. Come on, Yeah, no, I really wish she had more of a motive. More of a drive. So, and that's the thing. So, okay, so then she becomes warrior poet. So what is then her character arc? I wanted to be warrior poet. I became warrior poet. And then what's her life like? I just go ahead being a warrior. The thing is that the idea of I want to go out into the multiverse is then it's like, wow, we're going to travel to different dimensions and states of being and all this stuff and different worlds and meet other creatures and all this stuff versus I'm just going to do my job, have my role. This is what I was born. She could have become warrior poet if she wasn't a planeswalker, right? Mm-hmm. So who cares that she's a planeswalker if all she wants to do is something she could do without being a planeswalker?
I mean, she doesn't even realize
her poetry sucks. That poem is like what I would have to sit through in my junior college creative writing classes. It is just, what a great poem. Oh, God.
I like to imagine that maybe she's an amazing orator and like...
But an orator isn't a poet. That's the other thing I had a problem with, is orator is one thing, poet is another thing. A poet might not even be a good orator, and an orator might not be a good poet. These are different things.
I just imagine she's Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's rare.
That is rare. But that's why she's a dinosaur warrior poet.
Right. And much like a planeswalker stuck on Ixalan, Maya Angelou knows why the caged bird sings.
Yes, she does.
That is a terrible joke.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay, we're still friends.
Okay, good.
But yeah, no, I completely agree.
Story was boring. It was it was such, it failed to get me interested in the character. It failed to get me interested in the land, too. Really weird the way that the people of Ixalan, in this case Whatley's people, I mean the actual island,
the Empire of the Sun
Empire of the Sun Empire, mm-hmm. Not Empire of the Sun, Sun Empire.
That's a different real world thing.
Yes, Sun Empire they're presented very. They're dressed in the dinosaur feathers and kind of more, I guess, what we would call indigenous influenced outfits and costumes. But they speak in a very regimented, almost. I felt like it was almost a little bit like the British Navy, and we're going to have this regiment do this, and yes, Commander. And I felt very weird about that, because it feels to me like they said in a meeting, we can't do the noble savage thing where we can't have her talk like in this what would be stereotypically and offensively considered to be uncivilized way. So then we're going to do the opposite, which is let's just make them sound British, which is our most civil, which I feel is just as it didn't. I don't like the way they speak. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound to fit what we are visually being presented with. And I feel like it's making the exact same mistakes as if they did go with the noble, savage, warrior thing, but just it's the other end of the spectrum. Am I being unfair there?
So a lot of here's what I think, and this is another element maybe to consider. A lot of the influence of the Sun Empire within the story of Ixalan comes from Aztec and Mayan culture.
Right.
With regards to the Aztec people, they were considered to be conquerors, and they were considered to be like the dominant civilization in Mesoamerica for a good long time. It was one of the reasons that basically all the surrounding nations and tribes basically banded together with the Spanish to take them down. And it was one of the reasons why they were able to, be conquered like that, because they made so many darn enemies. And so I could imagine language like that being appropriate in some way for a fictitious, I guess, empire that takes its influence from a very dominating, very martial culture. That being said, though, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think anyone here, neither of us nor anyone at Wizards, I think, has a background in Mesoamerican language.
Yeah.
Like ancient Mesoamerican language and culture, and like how they would speak to each other. So perhaps they've chosen to use some more Western, imperialist language to approximate some of that.
It stuck out to me immediately, and
Yeah.
I immediately, I didn't even have to, I had a visceral,
Yeah.
I didn't like it. As soon as I read this story and the first words came out like that, I was just like, what are we doing here? And I feel this is going into a very unfortunate track record that Wizards has with good intentions.
Yeah,
We want to,
yeah.
first of all, just from an imaginative and creative standpoint, let us not just draw on a European fantasy mythos. Let us take a global perspective and let us look into Japanese and Asian and Indian, and now we get into the problem of the ideas are fine, and then the execution is as sloppy as, well, other things Wizards does. Unfortunately, where it's like, that's a great idea. Why don't we draw on Indian mythos, and then we're going to make it steampunk, and that goes great with British colonization, and it's just like a disaster. Again, please tell me if I'm being unfair here, because I'm going off of a red mage reaction. It's just my gut feeling. I'm not a scholar in this area. I'm not someone who would be designing culturally appropriate narratives for a game like Magic. So I'm just going off of my gut. Is my gut correct, do you think, on this? That there's more mistakes and errors and fumbles than there are successes?
I mean, what's tricky about this space, and particularly the space of Magic Story, is that there's only so much that we're going to be able to get in terms of understanding, in terms of exposure to the various cultures that are being presented. And so in many ways, what we're receiving is almost like shorthand.
Right.
And so when we are looking at the Sun Empire, what are the things that come to mind? They are martial. They believe very much in a warrior-led like society and civilization. They have a very unique empathetic bond with the animals around them, particularly the dinosaurs, and they are trying to reclaim what they once had. And so in many ways, this is a very aggressive, dominating culture.
So make them talk like Klingons.
No.
No, not Klingons?
Not Klingons.
No, okay.
First of all, I don't know if, like...
Whatley, you will need...
Kapla!
Kapla, Whatley.
Kapla!
I don't know.
But, I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily, and I don't think those three things are necessarily bad things, but I do think that it unfortunately creates a rather shallow understanding of what that culture is all about. Like when we think about Mesoamerican culture and we think about Aztec culture, I mean...
And I didn't learn much from this. And I don't know that's another topic for discussion later, is whether or not should I be learning about Mesoamerican culture from the Ixalan set. I don't know whether or not I should, but I can certainly tell you that not only did I not learn that from Ixalan, but I think I got stupider, because I also now think it has to do with pirates and dinosaurs and,
it's fantasy.
It's fantasy. It's fantasy. Okay.
Fantasy is not reality. But yeah, no, it does sound like both of us do have real reservations, and it's a problematic setup.
Yeah, it is. So I'm going to say that I would give this story mono white, just one mana symbol. It's boring, it's dull, and it did not interest me in the character whatsoever. Michelle?
I will give it up to blue.
Up to blue, wow.
I'm going to give it Azorius, because I like the idea of exploring a little bit more about the Martial Sun Empire and what that was all about. And also, I really liked understanding how it is that you can get a dinosaur friend. One day I'll have a dinosaur friend, and now I know a little bit more about how to do that. And it'll be great. Yay.
Our third story of the day is the talented Captain Vraska. Vraska, a character we have seen very, very little of prior, now returns to the forefront of Ixalan's story. What happens in the talented Captain Vraska? What's your summary of it?
So, Vraska comes home. She's had a long day. She's going to read her history, and read her history book. She's in the library, and she notices that someone stuck an invitation in one of her books. And
that's right. This story covers a lot of time, actually, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry. I forgot that we opened with, she's on Ravnica.
She is on Ravnica.
And she's in the Golgari sewers, which is a great place for a library.
I'm sure she's got, some kind of otherplanely dehumidifying agent.
Wouldn't Golgari view that as because Golgari are all about rot as part of life, so a way to prevent the rot would be appalling to them. I would think that they'd like a good rotting book, because it's what happens. Anyway, we're getting on it. Let's go on.
So she receives an invitation, and the invitation has magic on it that basically tells her where to go, which plane to go, and the spells, basically the spells that she needs to perform when she gets there, so that she doesn't get offed immediately. So she puts on her sensible flats.
Yes, I love that line.
Yes.
In case she needs to run.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely, because you never... I always think it's a good idea to be in sensible shoes. But, anywho, so she goes to Bolus's meditation plane.
Right.
Which is like a spa, but for Bolus, I suppose. So she gets there, she does the thing, Bolus shows up. He's like, I'd like to hire you to do a job. And she's like, I'm not accepting new clients right now, sir. And he's like, well, I don't want you to actually kill anyone. And she's like, what? And so she ends up talking to him a little bit. He's like, I can see into your mind. I see you want to lead the Golgari. I see you want to bring them into...
Here's my first issue.
Yeah.
Here's my first issue. He promises her, you do this, I'll make you the leader of the Golgari. And she goes, yes. She sure was rather accepting. I mean, so you're telling me, if I walked up to Vraska, just on the streets of Ravnica, I see Vraska, she's picking up some tea at the tea shop, and I walk into, the Ravnica Bucks, where she's picking up some loose leaf tea, and I go into Ravnica Bucks, and I say, hey, Vraska, and she's like, get out of my way, and I go, wait, would you like to lead the Golgari? And she's, oh my God, I want to lead the Golgari. So already she's just like already listening to me. And I go, all right, I want you to do this for me, and I'm going to make you lead the Golgari. Shouldn't she say, wait, how are you going to be able to do this? What's your proof? I mean, yeah, he showed her some impressive magic, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are now in charge of an entire guild on Ravnica, magic genie style. I'm just saying she sure believed him, really without question.
I mean, she did say later that she could just double cross him, and then he's like, no, you can't.
Right,
because I can read minds. But, I mean, he did show her some impressive tricks. Not only that, but so he was like, okay, so you need to go to this place, and here's a MacGuffin, I almost said thermometer, thaumaturgic compass, and also, like, you need to know how to sail. Now you can sail. It's to sailness.
Right.
It's like, people have been making the Matrix reference, like, a ton of times, but it's, like, absolutely spot on.
I never saw the Matrix.
There's a scene where Neo, the main character, he's like, you need to learn how to do Kung Fu, and so they basically, like, download all of Kung Fu into his head, and he wakes up and he's like, I can do Kung Fu, and that's a whole thing. So it's basically kind of a
so he gives her nautical sailing knowledge.
Yep.
How to tie knots and stuff.
How to tie knots and different bits of a ship and
I loved
on a ship.
I loved the idea, though, that this wasn't just that he gave her that knowledge, but that he gave her his knowledge. And it was even addressed in the story. And it's like, wait, why would Bolas, elder dragon of great size and infinite flight, know how to tie sailors' knots and sail? And he goes, hey, you get bored. And I loved it. I loved that because that's believable. But you see, Bolas interacts with the multiverse in a much more believable way. He has a spa land just for him to go rest and relax. And he isn't just like, no, I'm going to stay home and I just kind of want to, like, I want to get promoted to, commander of dragons, like Ral Zarek is a planeswalker, and he's perfectly content to just be in middle management in the Izzet. And he's like, maybe one day I'll get promoted to upper management. And it's just, why the F are you even on Ravnica still? Or why is this what makes you... But anyway, so Bolas is just like, I think I need an entire world to chillax on. And I'm going to password protect it. And... you know what? I'm bored. So just like, have you ever been on Wikipedia or YouTube and you just start clicking?
Yeah, I know.
And so Bolas essentially did the Magic the Gathering version of clicking, and learned sailing.
Yeah, I mean, like...
because he's millennia old.
I know way more about enamel making thanks to my midnight...
But see, that's very believable, and I liked that element where it's like, why would Bolas know how to sail? Because he got bored. He's got a lot of time to sit around and he reads. Take a look. It's in a book.
On his meditation plane.
On his meditation plane, yeah.
No, I really love this. I know there's been a lot of people talking about, like, what else does Bolas know? Like, what other weird esoteric knowledge does he know? Like,
he's an excellent chef, probably.
He's an excellent chef. He's probably really good at interior design.
Yeah.
I think
that the meditation realm, like, it is perfect color theory and arrangement.
Oh my gosh,
and that there's no clashing styles or designs. Absolutely.
There's like a whole section of beautifully arranged flavored waters. Yeah, but it's like organic fruits and vegetables.
Cucumber, lemon water, lime water,
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Pineapple water.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'd be important. He needs to relax.
I mean, when you're a dragon and you're taking on the entire multiverse, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So anyway, go on. So he NPC quests her.
Yes.
Do you accept this? This is main quest, not side. This is not gather 20 chickens. This is main quest stuff.
Bolas is like, it's in Diablo 3. It's like you get the little exclamation point above like Bolas' head. And so Vraska finds herself on Ixalan, where she has captained a giant boat called the Belligerent, and it's great. And the figurehead on her, on like the prow of her ship is actually the old captain, who she turned into stone and then like lashed to the front with ropes.
Right.
And she has a really great rapport with her crew. Like,
I really liked that she was happy too.
Yeah.
To me, that was the first thing that I really liked about the story, that I found to be a breath of fresh air. But that it opens up and she's sailing and she's like, you know what? When you get away from the BS politics of Ravnica, like, I can be free here. Nobody cares that I'm a Gorgon. Whereas on Ravnica, it keeps me in a certain place in society, and I hate it. This is, again, to go back to the thing, like, why she's sticking around. Now, I will believe that you also have an affinity for your home world and your people, and, you know, she views the Golgari as her people, and she wants to help them and stuff, but surely she has experienced there's other places in the multiverse where it doesn't matter that she's a Gorgon, and that they don't care. Although it is a little interesting that in Ixalan, we have a lot of creatures that don't exist on Ixalan that no one seems to really give two looks at. We got a Minotaur going around. She's the only Gorgon there, and nobody. And there's just like some kind of snake lady thing, like. But that also makes a certain amount of sense because there's there's probably lots of people you don't see and stuff. I'll buy it. It's a bit of a stretch. Even in New York City, a person who had, say, purple skin and a third eye is probably going to get note. Well, maybe not. Anyway, so no one really cares that she's a Gorgon, and she loves it. She loves being sailing. She's trapped there, and she doesn't care. She is thinking about the Golgari, but she also could probably be happy to just live out her days there. And as a result, she's got a very loyal, fierce crew. She's doing her. And then one day,
the compass points south.
Right.
And it makes no sense because the compass needs to be pointing the other direction since that's where land is and presumably where the memento that she's supposed to be grabbing for Lord Nicholas is. And so she ends up...
And speaking of memento, it turns out we've got a person with memory issues that she finds.
Yes, and she is incredibly alarmed and incredibly... scared, I think, at least a little bit when she sees him, and so she prepares the mental magic to like turn him to stone. But he's such a pathetic, sad, little like
lame.
Oh my God! It's just like, what happened to you, you sad little boy? Yeah, it's a little bit like.
Well, she thinks at first that he's coming to hunt her down somehow.
Yeah.
That when they last saw each other, they had a pointless fight. Yep. That she initiated, and he engaged in pointlessness on both ends. And she thinks Jace has come to hunt her down, and so she's ready to kill him first. But as it dawns on her that he's not in his right mind, she's not going to kill a person under those conditions. She has a code, she has beliefs, and she comes to find that he has no memory. Mm-hmm. She does not believe him fully at first, but he just looks so pathetic and wretched, it can't possibly be an act. And we have my favorite moment, which is that we have what I believe in at least the present day era is our first instance of swearing in a magic story, which I'm all for. I think this is great.
Jace is an asshole.
Yes. Well, he always was, but she calls him one, speaking for the audience.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
No. Lots. I could hear the reverberation of fists being raised all over.
What do you think of them? When I first read the story, I screenshotted it because I thought, as we all know, that they write these things in drafts. There's sometimes shorthand put in there that they mean to go back to later, and we have had incidents in the past where a story is accidentally published with an old draft, and there might be a section in there they wanted taken away or a section that they didn't feel was written right. And I thought a certain member of creative, we don't know who it is, let's just say it's Lalison Allers, maybe, a made-up name, is someone who maybe would write... Would definitely. We don't know who wrote it.
We don't know.
But you know, this Lalison person maybe would have just jokingly, as she's doing a draft, been like, you know, Jace, you asshole, and then later meant to clean it up, and then it got published, and so I took a screen. I loved it, and then it turns out, amazingly, no, they absolutely were okay with it, which I also absolutely am in favor of. And I want to ask you, what do you think of this? What does this mean? Why did they do this? What does it represent? I think it's significant in many ways. What do you make of them including adult language for the first time, be it in a very minimal way, in one of the modern day stories. I think some of the old novels probably had some of that stuff. I'd have to refresh. I think the old novels you would get in the 90s would use some strong language, definitely adult themes and such. But ever since we had the new Walkers come in, it's been very, rated G. G to PG at best.
Well,
at best PG. And now...
I think that people on the Wizards creative R&D team are realizing that, or maybe are fully embracing finally, that the game is targeted for ages 13 and above.
Yeah, so... and there's no 13-year-old that doesn't swear.
Oh, God, no.
Right.
I haven't met one yet.
So,
but I really like the idea that they're making this a little bit more believable. They're making this PG-13 territory, and they're actually... It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense because it validates a lot of what we've been feeling for a long time, and also adds a sense of realness to the characters that otherwise maybe were a little bit more ham-fisted. Like, if we contrast this to, say, the previous story with Huatli.
Right.
It felt very shoehorned. It felt very, like, it just didn't feel natural. But Vraska calling Jace an asshole... completely natural and completely understandable. I mean... And
it makes it much more relatable. It engages the audience, too, because every single person who reads Magic Story has most likely called Jace an asshole. And so everyone's going to enjoy that. But it also makes it so that the characters are more character than cartoon.
Exactly.
They're supposed to be adults. If stakes are meant to be taken seriously, then this can't be... the threat to Gummy Bear Land sort of thing. Things have to be real, characters have to be real, and that does mean real language. And quite frankly, everybody who's 13 and up speaks like this, talks like this on a regular basis, and so I'm all for it. I'm all for having more, adult themes. Within reason, I think keeping it in that PG-13, but acknowledging things that planeswalkers have sex and desires like that, and have language and do horrible deeds. I mean, then you get into the thing where we have no problem talking about, massacring an entire species on a world, but we have a problem saying the F word, and I'd rather my son say the F word than talk about, that we've got a character like Obnixilis that does genocide and such, and it's like, well, wait a minute here, what's our priorities? So I think it was a really good move. I couldn't believe that it wasn't an accident, and learning that it was on purpose is something else that gave me so much confidence in the current direction of story. So we got a lot of good things going here so far as I'm concerned. Jace's reboot, Vraska not being a one-note villain, and asshole.
Yeah, no.
This is the first Tolarian Community College video where there's been swearing, but that has only been, by the way, just because people under 13 watch, and I see no reason to engage in that for content that I wish to be applicable to all ages.
Gotcha.
Any 8-year-old that has sat through half an hour of us talking literature can handle the A word.
So. Another thing that I really liked about the story, if you don't mind, I'm going to pivot back to it. Really seeing these two characters interact with one another in a very believable way.
Yeah.
That was incredibly wonderful. I really enjoyed the fact that Jace, when he meets Vraska, he has the same joy and inquisitiveness when meeting her. It's like, oh, your name is Vraska. I think that's a linguistic root that's different than my name. And it's like, oh, you dork, you're so cute.
Right.
God, and like he's just so in awe of her, and I think it's so telling, especially that one scene where they're actually physically fighting alongside one another when being attacked, or they're basically scuffling with a bunch of vampires, and it's just
as you do.
But I mean, remember how difficult it was for Jace to play nice with others, to coordinate well with others in the Gatewatch. The
Gatewatch was forced.
It was very, very forced. And so when you see him in this scene fighting alongside Vraska, he wasn't in her way. He knew exactly what to do. He used his powers to complement her powers. It was really cool. I was really excited
But that was
about
also what he said too. Like when she saw him petrify someone, and she was a little like, this is someone who her society looks down on her species and her guild, and so here she did this thing, and she petrified, and she's like, what does this guy think of? And he's like, that was awesome. I think he calls her magnificent.
Yeah.
You're magnificent. And that's such an amazing moment to have that level of just, this is what has been missing from Magic's story is joy, awe, excitement, adventure. Everything has been miserable. People encounter beings of great power and they are bored and irritated. Entire worlds are at stake and the audience falls asleep. And here we just stop and we say, we got a snake woman and she turns a dude to stone, and you go, oh, that's so cool. And it is. And you get that excitement. And if Jace is supposed to be the character that the audience puts itself in his shoes, then that's the reaction you want. Why would you say, okay, so the audience is going to relate most to Jace, let's have him be really bored and boring, or let's have him say, everything is awesome. And that's what he's saying. He's like, the world is exciting. People are interesting. All this great stuff. He compliments Vraska very well. Question, in many ways, is Vraska Liliana 2.0? Is Vraska supposed to be what we kind of, what maybe Liliana they wanted to have happen but couldn't make happen? And so we've got, Vraska is, is it fair for me to say Vraska is still on the villain side, as it were? She's a sympathetic villain, which is the best kind. But she's more on the villain side. She's definitely on the evil spectrum in terms of her view of killing and killing for her own gain or gain of those that she cares about. But she does care. And it's good to be able to have that. I've always said we want to see that ability to care even in it. I mean, the thing about Batman villains that makes them some of the best is that you most of them you sympathize and you understand.
Mr. Freeze.
Sure, that's one of the classic examples.
Yeah.
But a good Batman villain is one where you kind of like them and root for them a little bit, and you understand why they're the way they are. And I think that we're seeing Liliana 2.0, or Liliana they could not break free of kind of the limitations that they themselves created in her character.
Yeah.
And getting it, I don't want to get too far into Liliana. That could be its own standalone episode.
Yes.
The problems with Liliana from creation to correction. That's what we should call it. Liliana. The problems with Liliana. Write that. Oh, we got it recorded. The problems with Liliana from creation to correction. But I feel like Vraska, in that we never really saw her except briefly in a very forgettable kind of story. They had a very blank slate with her. And they did it, and again, blank slate, like Jace, they did an amazing job, and I am going to be so pissed off if we go separate ways, if she just joins the Gatewatch and we're all back to where we were. No reboots. No reboots. This is great. Jason Vraska, the adventuring team throughout the multiverse. Can we just please stick with what works? Please.
I really want to. That would be amazing.
You're not going to do it.
I really... we'll see.
It's going to be Gatewatch. If we're going to get Oath of Vraska, Gideon's going to show up. G-Man.
So, just touching a little bit back on like Vraska versus Lily, I think they're very fundamentally different characters in a lot of ways. Lily has always been out for herself.
Right.
And Vraska has always started with a high sense of empathy, which Lily does not have. And Lily believes she cannot afford to have.
Right.
Yeah, because when Vraska talks about, when she talks about her camaraderie with her crewmates, it is sincere and it is felt and it is truthful. When her siren lookout, Malcolm, comes down and says, like, I'll just tell my beloved that I'll have a ship of gold coming back. And she's like, and you will. And she's like, and I mean it. You will have that ship of gold, my friend.
Right, yeah.
And that's just how she feels. Like, she wants to be there for her people. Like, she is...
It's what I've always wanted to see in Black, which is that Black can be about ambition and selfishness, but I always wanted to see, well, what about for the people that are your friends?
And that's
you
what
can.
Green, and that's what Green introduces into this mix.
Yes, I'm sure that's the excuse. I feel like you could have. I feel like you could have that with Mono. I feel like I believe you could have that with Mono Black.
No,
I think that Mono Black could say, in the same way you go, this is for me, say this is for my people. And it's like, I'll murder for my people. Like, it's fine, you know, anything, ambition, or the ambition that she has of the Golgarian stuff. Sure, I guess the green helps, but I feel that, anyway, that's an old argument. So I have a feeling you and I agree on the rating of this story, but why don't you go ahead first and tell me?
Forest. 5 out of 5.
5. I'd say gold.
Isn't this?
Yeah.
Let's throw in the little diamond thing.
Right. This is every color. This is 5 color. This is 5 color good stuff. I give this 5 color good stuff.
Yes.
One of the best stories in a real long time. Vraska, I think I tweeted out something like this, but Vraska is a character I always thought had great potential, and this one story alone transformed her from a character that I felt had great potential and was interested in to possibly my favorite overall. And I, again, number 1, please don't screw this up. Story, people, and wizards, and corporate, and everyone involved, please don't screw this up. Number 2, please keep Jace and Vraska together. Number 3, please do not have Vraska join the Gatewatch. Number 4, please do not have Jace's memories come back. Number 5, see 1 through 4 and repeat them a few times.
I would also
Anything
like to add
yeah.
Please no cat fight between Lily and Vraska.
Oh my God!
Please don't. Just don't do that. I don't think you're going to do that.
Are we okay? One last question on this, because this was something that did come up. I saw some people discussing it. The idea of romance between Jace and Vraska, is that something that's cliche? That just because he's male and she's female, we need to do romance, or should they stay friends? What do you think? Like, do we like the idea of shipping them? I mean, obviously shipping, and they're on a ship, But is that going back to cliche, where, well, he's a boy, she's a girl, he wants to do the boy-girl thing and she wants to do the girl-boy thing? Are we going into cliche, or is it like, it's okay to fall in love with a Gorgon? It's okay to say, you know, sexy shirt, stupid sexy Jace. You know, like, you know, do we want to go that way, or do we want to just say, hey, we're a couple of friends going off on an adventure?
What I have really loved about this particular relationship is that wherever it goes and wherever it's going, it seems to be going very naturally.
Yeah.
There is mutual affection and admiration, and honestly, seeing them together is not a huge, like, in a romantic way, is not like a huge thing for me. I mean, I'm content to have them be like BFFs. They sit around drinking tea in Vraska's like library and just hanging out, you know, forever, and that would just be great. But I mean, seeing them together, that is also nice. But I one thing I really want to focus on is just, a lot of people are saying, oh, Jace plus Vraska's like the most perfect thing in the world. I'm like, no, it's not going to be perfect. No. It's going to be like a real relationship, because so far, Creative is doing a really good job of writing them as real people with real problems.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
If they do get together, my hope is that they're going to have actual problems, because that's what people have when they get close to one another. We could also
see a more adult presentation of these things. I mean, love takes many forms. Dating can take many forms. Friendship can take many forms. Sex can take many forms. Sex means a lot of things.
Yes, it does.
Also, I think it would have to, because I don't know that humans and Gorgons are sexually compatible, but we can find each other's different strokes for different multiverse creatures.
Perhaps.
I mean, anyway, we'll stop there.
We'll stop there, but either way, what I've been very pleased with so far is just, I love how these characters are just like more and more real to me. Yeah. In a good way.
In a good way. I always say, for me, my litmus test is, would I want to hang out with these people in an elevator?
Oh, totally.
And old Jace, no, I don't even want to read about him. New Jace, sure, I'd like to hang out with him in an elevator. New Vraska, she seems, as long as she's okay with you, she's someone I'd want to hang out with in an elevator. And that's always the test for me, because that's, why else am I reading this story? And even someone like Nicol Bolas is so interesting that, again, if you'd survive it, I would want to hang out in an elevator, because I'd have so many questions for him, and I'd want to hear his answers. And we always want to see more Nicol Bolas and such. And so that, I feel, you know, this is a sign of things to come. Will they screw it up? Find out next time on At the Multiverse when we take a look at the next 3 stories of Ixalan. As always, I'm the Professor, and joining me is my co-host, the Librarian of the Lorgoyfs, Michelle. Michelle, tell everybody where to find you.
So I can be found on Twitter at Ninox That's NINOX_.
I'll have it appear below you.
Okay, MORPORK. And you can also find me on the Lorgoyfs, which is a Vorthos-themed podcast.
Check that out.
Yeah.
Information should appear
in the doobly-doo.
Is that copyrighted? Can we say doobly?
We can say doobly-doo.
We can say doobly-doo.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Until next time, take care.
And this video is brought to you by my and many other people's local game store, Card Kingdom, a brick-and-mortar pillar of this community, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. These are the people that keep Tolarian Community College going and growing strong. So thank you.